I think that's probably one of the bigger lessons that I've learned in life is really, really know who you're, like a better term, getting into bed with, because it is pretty much another marriage in life. Because whatever they have going on in their life comes with them into your business and it becomes part of your life too. So that was probably one of the biggest life lessons.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Business Aspirin. I'm your host, Clint Junell, the podcast where we talk about all the bumps and bruises that business owners have gone through, and we give them some business aspirin for the new entrepreneur to hopefully not run into those same things. And today we have with us Ryan King. Ryan is with NuFlow out of the DFW market, specifically in Plano. Ryan, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's really nice to have you on, and it is what I'm going to say is a beautiful day in DFW, although it's not pretty outside right now. It's not 104.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
And
I'm glad for the cooler weather.
Dude, unbelievable. So happy about that. So tell us about Ryan. Who is Ryan King?
Well, there's not much to say about me. I just a normal guy who decided that he was going to try to be an entrepreneur in life. And you can see by the grays growing in my face, it is not an easy feat. But when you get to the point where you decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and go out on my own, once you do it the first time, you kind of have a hard time going back. So it's just been a, cycle of more losses than wins. But when I do have a win, they are pretty good. And, I try to push in hard into those things. And most of it is just figuring out, where the mistakes are, cut those mistakes out as fast as possible. But mostly my background is in the AVL industry. That's audio, video, and lighting. Spent over 30 years of my life as a audio engineer and worked in various mega churches and small churches all across the Southwest area, Texas, and started kind of when I was in high school through college into probably my early 30s, and then decided that I was, going to try to figure some other business ideas out on my own. Started an AVL home installation company during the 2000 financial crisis, mostly because I couldn't find a job to save my life. And so I started doing that, a bunch of high rises down in uptown Dallas around that time. Started offering my services, hanging TVs, putting up speakers, that kind of thing. And then started getting more and more calls to do that in those areas. And we started expanding and growing. Did that for several years. And then, kind of long story short, came across the NuFlow product. We basically licensed the technology to install the certified installer for the DFW area. So we have to go through training, a lot of it, in order to be able to do what we're doing. So I jumped in about 2021, late 2021, started doing it, figuring it out, kind of stumbling forward through the whole process. And now we're just plugging along, doing residential and light commercial work. We try to handle the DFW Metroplex, but a lot of our work comes from the Plano, Richardson, Dallas area. We do work in Arlington and Fort Worth and Denton, that kind of stuff. So that's more than, I'm not sure if I'm answering the question well enough or not.
No, that's fine. We want to just kind of get to know, who you are and what you do. So you kind of broach the subject. So let's talk about what is NuFlow. Is it pipe coating? Is it pipe lining? Is it pipe replacement? What do you guys do?
Sure. So the NuFlow is the manufacturer of pipe lining products. This is kind of the felt liner that goes in. It's a structural lining material, basically like a really thick sleeve on a jacket. And more or less what we're trying to do is stop corrosion or seal off breaks inside sewer or drain lines. Where there may be root intrusions, maybe holes, and maybe lateral cracks. Something that is causing water to get out of the pipe and get into the water tables, the groundwater table. So we're trying to seal that off, stop that from happening, and really extend the life of the pipe so that you don't have to go in there and dig it all up. Now, there's many instances we have to dig up portions of the pipes because they're just too bad to line, or they physically can't be lined because of the way that they're designed. So this material, this is basically what our standard ambient cured material. We basically take a 2 parts epoxy mix and pour it into this felt liner and saturate it into these fibers. And then when it's done, it kind of turns a light blue. I don't have the bladder with me, but inside this, once we get the epoxy in, there's a bladder that goes inside of this because we need a way to push this up around the inside of the pipe. So we have a
Okay,
hose pipe
sure.
that can contain it.
Okay.
So we'll compress it down, kind of roll it up like this, and then we literally pull it inside the pipe. So there's a pull in that gets attached here and makes an airtight seal on the bladder, rubber bladder itself. And on the other side of the bladder, there's an air compressor connection hose that will inflate the bladder once we get it inside the pipe and deployed, and then it pops open the tape and gets it nice and round, forces it up inside the pipe as tight as we can get it. And then this stays in the ground about 10 hours to harden and cure as it goes through its process. And then basically this is kind of the end result of what's happening is this piece of PVC. So this right here is the end result of that felt liner that you saw with the epoxy in it. So it creates a nice smooth surface for solids to run down and get where they're supposed to go. Seals off cracks and holes. This stuff, once it's mixed, it's pretty hard and it's ready to last over 30 years, just like PVC. So what we're trying to do is just create a monolithic pipe inside your system, because a lot of times, specifically with PVC, you're going to see the connections of joints as they glue them pop apart. Roots get attracted to the sewer gas and the water in there, and then they just start pushing them around. So what we want to do is get rid of that pipe. I mean, the roots first, put the liner in, close up those breaks so you don't ever have to worry about them again. And then those areas that we can't line, we go in there and physically replace with our conventional plumbing. And then what we try to do in as many instances as possible is we try to get the liners over into the new plumbed in PVC so that we seal off any points of failure for the future, specifically with cast iron or clay.
So it's a pretty niche market, right? That you've gotten into. So you said you kind of went from the AVL world into that.
Mm-hmm.
How'd that happen? What's the connection there? Because it's unique.
Yeah. It was. I was part of a residential development team, and the developer that we were working with at the time, he just randomly calls me up one day and says, "Hey, you need to check into this NuFlow product. I think you would do really well out there." So I started doing research during 2021, just after the whole COVID fun, and noticed that there wasn't very many people doing this work in the area. So I said, I've got to give it a shot. Got to figure it out. So I went ahead and signed up and started going for it. And there's a lot of trial and error to the process. It's not an easy process because you're working on fixing a problem that may be 50, 60 feet away from you from a hole that's 3 inches or 4 inches around. And, the whole idea is not to dig up people's homes and foundations. So when I was in the AVL industry, audio and video is very technical. It's mechanical. You have to know your signal flow, where something starts, where it ends, what's causing problems, and how to fix it. And so this is the same thing. It's just you're figuring out, okay, I have a problem over there. How do I go fix it? And so it's a lot of it is problem solving at its finest, because there's all kinds of fun things that can occur when you're trying to fix a pipe, and then you just got to figure it out. We have a lot of different problem solving tools and methods to make things happen that they're kind of out of the box thinking. It's kind of how it worked for me, where I was like, okay, this is something that I can understand. If there's a problem, how to fix it. So most of my guys are very good problem solvers. If those people aren't good problem solvers, it's probably not the business to get into.
Sure.
Or at least, you can find the guys that are and pay them a good amount of money to go work.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so then you got into the space.
Mm-hmm.
You have to navigate who your primary target is.
Mm-hmm.
So who is your primary customer? How far do you reach? Are you just DFW? Who's your primary customer? Like, how do you navigate the decision process in what I'm going after?
Gotcha. Well, a lot of it is we really like working with people that are proactive on maintaining their facilities, whether it's a residential home or a commercial building. Infrastructure is something that's huge. Unfortunately, with sewer and drains, people don't know there's a problem until it's already caused a lot of damage. And so really our ideal customer is either a proactive person trying to mitigate those problems before they create an even bigger problem, or someone who's just trying to look around and see what they've got There's a lot of people now that are buying homes, specifically last year and the year before, where they were just buying them without even knowing what they're purchasing. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, they start having problems. And then that's when we get the calls, hey, I bought this house. We have these problems, so on and so on. So we have to come in there and fix it and educate the person as to what did they just buy. So it's kind of a shell shock. Sometimes people are just wanting to make sure what they've got stays livable, it's maintainable, and they know. We get a lot of calls from people that just know that their pipes are old. In the case of cast iron, they stopped putting that in mid 1980s, and so that pipe is reaching the end of its life and its capacity to keep doing what it's doing without causing some real damage. And so they'll come to us for an alternative solution because there's really only three things that you can do when you have sewer and drain issues. You dig it up and replace it all. And then in its own, it's a good solution, but it has its own drawbacks inherently, and I can explain that in a second. But the second is rerouting. Again, it has its own drawbacks. And pipelining. There's various different methods of pipelining, but it also has its drawbacks. It can't solve all the problems. So if you can figure out how to utilize all three of those solutions, you have a more comprehensive fix to whatever you've got going on under your house.
Well, fun fact, I was plumbing in the mid 80s with my grandfather and my father.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned how to install cast iron pipe, originally even with oakum and lead, and pack that stuff in. That's how old I am. And then it went to rubber boots inside cast iron.
Yep.
And then, I mean, I've dealt with Orangeburg pipe even. Like, I'm old.
Yeah.
I'm old.
Yeah, we don't see that much anymore.
So, which is, it's unique. Most people won't even know what that means when I say,
Mm-hmm.
oakum and lead on pipe. But
Mm-hmm.
dealing with sewage lines, you probably understand that. So, like, are you competition for plumbers? Do they consider you competition? Are you going after plumbers as an alternative source for, how would that work?
Yeah, so in some fields, I'm sure you get this often, is there are going to be people who are going to view you as competition, and there's going to be people that view you as an asset. We try very, very hard not to be competition for plumbers. We need plumbers because we're pipeliners. There's a lot of plumbing work that we come across, and we partner with plumbers. We say, hey, we got this work. We're going to line this portion of it. You guys plumb the rest. Let's all try to make a customer happy. But there are some people that are just like, we're going to come there and take their work. But we try to build symbiotic relationships with plumbers so that they call us when there's things that they can't do or the customer doesn't really want to do. Like in the case of most people are, if they want to replace and go with PVC under their slab, obviously they can do it. There's some areas they just don't want to dig up, like their driveways. There's full concrete slabs across driveways. When their pipes go right underneath them, they have to rip up the entire driveway to get to it. And they just don't want to do that. And so they'll call us. We're very minimally invasive. We do need 2 points of entry. So either some sort of clean out up front and maybe a vent stack at the back of the house. Even if it's downstream, we need to clean out at the double sweep in the yard, or we might need some access downstream. Most of the time, we'll just put an access pit at the very downstream portion. We'll get to it and then line that section that they don't want to replace. Other times, the pipe is really, really deep. In the case of some commercial projects, those pipes are 12, 15, 20 feet deep, sometimes even more. And digging that much dirt out, I mean, it's very dangerous for people to get into those holes. Many instances of guys getting buried underground because of the shoring didn't hold or something that didn't shore it at all. So in those cases, pipelining is a very useful tool to repair a problem that someone else couldn't really do, or the cost to do it was very high.
Does the cast iron, for instance, the products that you guys line, does it have to be underground or surrounded by something, or can it be exposed?
It can be exposed. There's various other different methods of pipe. If we can get our hands on the pipe, and say it's a storm drain of some sort, we can get our hands on it. It makes our job a whole lot easier. It's a lot less expensive because if there's a problem, we can grab it, go ahead and do whatever repairs we got to do. But in the case of, say, it's a fire suppression system, it's a different type of product, a different type of epoxy and rating that the material is capable of withstanding. So those are pressurized systems. What we mostly deal with on an everyday basis is our gravity. So water basically coming out of your system. So there's water coming in, water going out. So the stuff that's coming in somewhere requires a much robust product. that can handle upwards of 160, 185 psi of consistent pressure. So if you did that with this material, our gravity fed system, would blow it up. So we have to really know what we're getting into, ask questions, make sure the customer knows, hey, these are the types of things it can and things that it can't do.
So it raises the question for me, just because I've got experience partly on part of this and a potential opportunity, although not here for you. So I know. So when I grew up in the plumbing, heating, air conditioning world, that's what led me into indoor air quality and then into the restoration space. So I can think specifically of a building in Amarillo where there's a certain type of cast iron where the gas of the cast iron would actually eat the top of the cast iron away, and the top piece of the cast iron would be gone and it would fall into the drain itself.
Yeah.
And this was exposed in buildings. So if a portion of the cast iron is missing, can you still line something that's damaged to that level? You got to clear it out first, I guess.
Yeah. We have to, obviously we have to clear it out. In that situation, the cast is probably really brittle and beyond its age limit. So we try to tell people, if you're in that kind of 50 to 60, 40, 50, 60 year range, try to do something now, because there is a point of no return. But in those situations, you have to be really delicate with cleaning the pipe. We can't use really aggressive methods that we would typically use in cast iron. We'll have our chain knockers basically have carbide tips on the chains and they spin. So we'll get them in the pipe, and that's, if the pipe's strong enough to withstand it, we'll use that to get the scale off of them. And then we'll use water jetters to clear the debris out. We'll try and get the pipe as open as possible. But in the instance where the pipe is deteriorated to that degree, we have less aggressive methods to clean the pipe. We may not get it 100% clean, but we want to take a lot of the big chunks of debris out and get it as open as possible, with the knowledge that, hey, there's going to be some areas that may, it may kind of look like this and have some ripples in the pipe as we cover that over. But this is designed specifically, even if we come across a hole, we'll have a piece of vinyl that we'll cover it with so that it basically acts as a host pipe. So if there's no pipe there on the top or the bottom, that vinyl will act as a place for this liner to kind of contain it, keep it from going,
keep it from bubbling up
they'll
the
kind
bladder.
of do that. So long story short, yeah, we can take care of that. Sometimes we have to fill up the hole with marbles or BBs or something like that, so that we can get the liner to kind of cover over that gap.
So what does the marketing look like for a pipe lining business? What are you saying to the public? Like, if somebody is, and the reason I ask that is because I want to ask questions that I think might lead to somebody having thoughts outside of what they're used to thinking. Because in your business, it's a different method of a very specific target of pipe with this very specific solution.
Right. Most of the time people are calling us because, they got the quote, right? They got the quote for the replacement. The quote's huge. And I do tell people our method is not necessarily the cheapest solution. It is the least invasive and the least destructive, because it is quite a bit of work, and there's failure points that are going to happen. There's going to be problems. Every job we come across and we do, there's some sort of problem that occurred, hence the problem solving portion of it. We have to figure out how to make it work. So we try to make sure the customer is well informed. As far as marketing is concerned, we try to do a lot of referral base. We work with real estate agents. We try to let them know what we're doing. Engineering firms, architectural design firms, mechanical guys, and some plumbers. We get calls quite often from plumbers that their customers specifically know about what we're doing, and they want that option. They want to look at it to see if it's worth it for them. Sometimes they decide to go with a full-on replacement. That's totally fine. Just like everybody, you win some, you lose some. So hope I'm answering your question right there. But
I'm just trying to figure out what do you say to get people to understand who you are and what you do? Like, what attracts people to, what, I should look at having my pipes lined instead of calling the plumber because I've got some kind of sewer leak or smell, or like, do you guys market this for odor control at some level? Do you market it for just stopping the leak? Do you market it?
We don't market much for odor control. We market for drain clogs. We market for backups. So if you got any issues in your pipes, root intrusions, that kind of thing, anything that's going to stop your pipes from flowing, we try to target those particular customers. Also, if people on a budgetary aspect, there's some guys out there that will charge quite a bit of money to replace sewer systems. And they're, someone's unable to afford it, but they still need to have the work done. And so in some instances, we can be very competitive. But, if it's somebody who just doesn't have any funds to do that work, we can step into the work. The good thing about pipelining is you can add some here, you can add a little bit more, you can add a little bit more, and go down the process. You're taking care of the problem over a longer period of time. There's more visits, there's more headaches, when you're doing it that way. But yeah, in regards to marketing, we're really trying to get the word out, and it's hard because I'd say 90 to 95% of the people we talk to don't know this product is out there, but it's been out there for decades. It's just no one's tried to get the word out. So that's what we're trying to do.
Really break into the market
with
it. Okay, so it makes it an interesting thought for me is like at some level, I was thinking this was like technologically driven company, because you like in my head, that's new technology. And then you said it's been out there for decades. So it's not, quite as new technology, but you guys have to go in. If somebody has an issue, you have to go in and I would assume use camera systems to inspect a pipe.
Mm-hmm.
So you go through the process of inspecting the pipe to determine what might be wrong, what you might or might not be able to help. That you said at some level, there's a point of no return. So there's times you have to tell customers, I'm sorry, we can't help you.
It's rare, but yes.
You inspect the pipe, you start the sleeving process. How long does it take to repair somebody's sewer line on average?
Much of it depends on how much is in there. If you're talking about a ranch style home, they've got 180 to 250 feet of pipe. I mean, it's a lot of pipe. And so we're pulling liners in, basically, again, depending on the temperature outside, because it is ambient based materials. How hot it is will accelerate the curing process. So it shortens our working time. In the summer, wintertime, we have a lot more time to work with, but we can only manage about 80 feet at most at a time with this particular method. There are other, like I said, other lining methods out there that can handle longer stretches, but for what we do specifically, that's what we do. So we use our cameras to clean, cameras to inspect, we use our camera to measure the liner to find out how much is needed in every section, what size of the pipe, what size of liner needs to go in there, connection points. There's just a lot of variables. But if we're talking about a big system like that, you're looking at 2.5 weeks to treat an entire system from front to back for the pipe line.
150 feet or so of pipe?
150 feet, well, depending on how it's plumbed in, that could be about a week and a half, 2 weeks, depending on the headaches that we run into.
And then how big of a section do you do at a time?
So let's say the yard lines. Those are pretty standard sizes. Most of the time, they're 30 to 50 feet. We can handle that whole stretch in pretty much one day.
Yeah, but I mean, like the piece that you showed us of the material, is that the length of a piece, or is that a section of a piece? Or
this is kind of like our smallest section that we deal with. Like this is about a 2.5, 3 foot section of liner. We can do 80 feet of this
in one piece.
In one piece.
Okay.
One long piece.
Okay.
If you can go on our website and take a look at some of the projects, you'll see them sitting out there, these long liners, and we're testing them, making sure that the bladders are going to hold. But that whole liner, once it's prepped and ready, that is measured and designed, and the intention is to get that whole length in the pipe. So depending on how well that goes, we try to get all of it in the pipe. Sometimes it doesn't let us do that, and we have to kind of let little sections of it stay out, and then we have to deal with whatever we've got to deal with at that point. But yeah, say kitchen lines, 2-inch lines are the most difficult for us to work with because they're small. The smaller the pipe, the less margin of error. There's just a lot of gunk that
tighter the bends.
Yeah, tighter the bends, more probability of trouble. So if there's a long, say 50-foot, 60-foot section of 2-inch, we'll typically cut that in half. So we'll do shorter sections at a time so that they're easier to manage.
Okay. What's the coolest thing you've seen doing what you do?
Oh, the coolest thing. Honestly, when we have what we call a reinstatement. Reinstatements are when we have a connecting lateral branch line that comes off the main. So say it's a toilet line for a bathroom group off to the right or left of the house. We have to cut that open to get it to flow. So we have a couple robotic cutters that will deploy in there, basically like huge Dremels, and they run at 20,000 RPM. And seeing my guys use that and see that thing work and go in there and cut that thing open, it's pretty cool to watch.
It's like robotic surgery, right? It's like
Yeah,
the surgeons that make. I would imagine it has to be pretty precise because it's cured at that point, right?
yeah, it's cured and hardened at that point. So
Interesting.
we have to know where it's at. We have to get before we put the liner in. We have to know where that hole is. So if we're off by a little bit and we're cutting the wrong spot, can't say that we haven't done that before. But machines do a lot of weird things when they're in confined spaces and they're making a bunch of bends and turns. The measurements are off just a little bit, but we have different methods of using light to tell us where we are, using measured distances to make sure we know where we're going to go. We put the robot in the pipe before we line it to measure the connections first, make sure we have adequate tape marks. So we make markers for ourselves at the clean out where we deploy it. So if the connection is 40 feet away, we'll get the robot in, get it in there. We say, this is the front end. We'll pull it back. This is the middle. Pull it back. This is the back end. So we know 40 feet at this point on the robot core, that basically the cable, we know that's where the connection is. We'll pull it out, put the liner in, let it cure, put the machine in, and we start grinding where our marks are, and then go on to the next and the next.
Sounds like a lot of work. What's the biggest headache you have in business, Ryan?
Employees.
And what part of that? Like keeping track of what they're doing, where they're at, how things are going, clocking in. Like what's the
all of it.
attitudes?
Getting them to show up on time, my guys, when they do show up, they work really hard, and I appreciate that. But getting them to show up on time is tough. Accounting for all the variables is probably even harder because there's always going to be something that is mistaken or missed, specifically in a kind of a time-based process. Like once it's mixed, there's no going back. We have to go. And so the scramble, if you ever see it happening especially the ambient cure, the UV based, which you can talk about if you'd like, we can take all day long on that one as far as like time is concerned because it's based on UV light. But this ambient cure, what we call it blue, is time based. So once it's mixed, it begins to heat up, and it heats up faster if it stays in a big clump. So we got to get it out in the liner and saturate it. We have to calibrate it, make sure it's evenly distributed across the liner so every part of the liner has the exact same amount of epoxy. And then we have to get it in the pipe. So while we're getting our hands on it, that thing's heating up. It's hot outside. It's heating up even faster. We have to cool it down. And so we're scrambling everywhere, and something gets forgotten, something important a lot of times. Those are the things that are constantly, on a business owner's mind that's doing this work.
Sure.
Like, did you account for everything? Did you make sure we didn't cover up something that wasn't supposed to be covered up?
Yeah, sure. So what's something in the entrepreneurial journey, what's something you wish someone would have told you before you started?
Good question. I guess in the early stages, knowing who you're partnering with is a big one. Not everybody who you have as a partner or somebody that wants to partner with you is going to be a good partner. There was a business that I started with a couple people that I didn't know very well, and I didn't realize who they were for years later, and that's what really killed the business. I think that's probably one of the bigger lessons that I've learned in life is really, really know who you're, like a better term, getting into bed with, because it is pretty much another marriage.
It is.
In life, because whatever they have going on in their life comes with them into your business, and it becomes part of your life too. So that was probably one of the biggest life lessons.
Yeah, that's fair. I can appreciate that. My business partner is still around, and he probably listens to some of these, so I have to be really cautious about what I say about him. He knows I would say things about him, but I won't do it publicly on the podcast because just to make my life a little better along the way.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a great business partner and they're helping, I mean, you're going to have trouble, you're going to have fights and disagreements and stuff.
Always.
But, if they're making the business, whatever you're doing, better, they're a great business partner.
Yeah.
If they're not, you should question
them. Sure. Yeah. So we talked about, something you wish you had known. Is there anything that just surprised you along the journey?
You get into this, and specifically this business. Are you talking about this business or just in general?
Just any of it. Yeah.
I think it surprised me I'll start with this business and the others. It was surprising that when you first get into it, how you think it's going to be easy. And just in every business, like, yeah, this is great. We can make all this money and then everything's going to go great. Get into it. And then reality doesn't really set in, I think, on most businesses for about a year and a half to 2 years in. Then you're just like, okay, this is what I got to deal with. And then you get to the point in your career and in whatever business, you got to decide, am I going to be willing to keep doing this for the long haul? Because you got to get to a point where you scale it. And if you're not, if you're just maintaining and you're just making money on it, it's cool. But then at some point, you got to decide, is that enough or do we need to grow? And if you're in a grow mentality, those growing pains hurt and they don't stop and they get worse. And then you got to manage it. And then you gotta be able to sustain it. Then you scale again. So it's just like this thing that continues to come no matter what you do, and it
Absolutely
doesn't
does.
stop. And I guess in my AVL business, what surprised me is in the end, people don't necessarily care about your business like you do. They just want to make sure that they get what they paid for, and you try your best to give them the best product that you possibly can. And I've always been surprised at the little things can cause the biggest damage. Nobody cares how much work you did and how much effort you put in to get them what they wanted. They care about the nick on the wall or the scrape on the floor. And that can destroy your whole credibility and make a customer really frustrated, even though you spent 99.9% of the time fixing a problem that they had. It's that one little thing that can really, really cause you hell.
We say around here quite often is that no good deed goes unpunished. And that's just a reality, right? You can do everything right. In our primary business on the restoration side, there'll be complaints about stuff in rooms that
Yeah.
we didn't address, and that's not even us. We weren't there. Like, that's not what we did. We were over here.
Yeah.
It's just part of it, right? And people get frustrated and people want to complain occasionally, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's the reality of where we're at and how we live.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be respectful of the time, right? We're
Yeah, you're good.
closing in on 40 minutes. So what's one nugget? Like, we've had some things we've talked about in terms of, like, knowing your partner, and we've had conversations about, the little details and some of the things that go into that. But
Mm-hmm.
so there's nuggets that people could pull, but what's the one thing you would want to give to an entrepreneur that would be listening to this podcast to make them go, I see where they're coming from. I need to remember that when I start my journey. Because again, a minute ago you said, oh, it's going to be easy. Like, we all thought it was going to be easy, right? I'm good at this, and everybody likes me. This is great. I'm going to knock it out of the park. And then, so what's that one nugget that you're like, this is what I would want to share?
I'd say life is short. If you have a dream and you want to be able to make some little mark in life that has your name on it, I'd say give it everything you got, especially when you get to the days when you just want to give up. And on those days, I always look back to be like, hey, there was a problem that occurred whatever time ago. I made it through that one. I'm going to make it through this one. I just got to grind. I got to grind and then keep going step by step until that problem is no longer an issue. And then it helps you get to the next problem and deal with that problem. And then you just look back and be like, this is a problem. I made it through that one. I'm going to tackle this one. And that creates a kind of grit and tenacity in you that you begin to realize you're capable of a lot more than you think you are. And so just find the grit in yourself.
Yeah, I think that's great. So far we've survived all the hard days, right?
Yeah.
All the hard days we've survived, we're still here. We're having a conversation. And I think it's important for people to hear that, because we talk about this quite a bit on the podcast, is like, it's going to be hard. Like, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. It's difficult. And then when you start stressing about, okay, well, now what? If you don't have that grit you just talked about, it's very easy to quit what you thought was what you wanted to accomplish early on, and sometimes even after a couple of years, and just go get a job.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got to create that mindset that says, no, I want this to be dependent upon me, and I'm going to go work, and I'm going to earn it, and I'm going to drive it. I think that's great. I think that's great. Ryan, good talk, man.
Likewise.
Really appreciate having you on. It's intriguing to me what you do. I'm intrigued by it, and we'll probably have some more conversations about some of that stuff as well.
Love to.
Offline later and other times, and see how it goes. But man, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much for your time today, Ryan.
Thank you. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to give us a call. There's a whole lot more in here that would probably take up hours of time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All
All
right.
right, Ryan. Take care,
Thank
man.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Clint.
Bye.